The moment I realized my family had turned me into their personal ATM wasn't when my sister stole my identity. It wasn't even when my parents expected me to fund their lifestyle while I could barely afford my own. No, it was the night they handed me a $1,500 dinner bill for a celebration I'd been deliberately excluded from, and then laughed in my face when I questioned it. My name is Andrea Parker, and the truth hit me like a physical blow that night at Belanti, an upscale Italian restaurant with white tablecloths and wine that cost more per bottle than my weekly grocery budget. As I stood there, staring at 15 family members lounging around a table of empty plates and drained wine glasses, something inside me finally broke free. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up funding an anniversary dinner I never ate, you need to know how I became my family's walking bank account in the first place. It started innocently enough. I was 24, fresh out of college, when Mom called about being short on the mortgage. Dad had been laid off again. Could I help out? Just this once? Of course, I said without hesitation. That's what family does, right? We take care of each other. Except just this once became every month for 2 years. The mortgage became car payments. Car payments became utility bills. Utility bills became credit card debt they'd somehow accumulated while I was paying for everything else. And when my sister Amber graduated college, guess who started covering her rent because her new job wasn't paying quite enough yet? I was 28, working at a tech company downtown, making decent money for the first time in my life. Not rich by any measure, but comfortable enough to afford my own apartment, pay my bills, and maybe, just maybe, save a little on the side. Or at least, that's how it should have worked. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck, watching my bank account drain faster than I could fill it, always wondering where my money was going. The answer was hiding in plain sight. I wasn't just supporting myself. I was bankrolling my entire family's lifestyle, one emergency at a time. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I kept believing they'd pay me back when things got better. I kept clinging to the idea that this was what families did. We helped each other through rough patches. But looking back now, I see the truth with painful clarity. I was the only one doing any helping. I was the only one sacrificing. I was the only one who couldn't afford to live my own life because I was too busy funding theirs. The anniversary dinner was supposed to be different. For once, I was looking forward to a family gathering that wasn't centered around what I could pay for, but on celebrating something meaningful, my parents' 30 years of marriage. Mom had been planning it for weeks, talking nonstop about Belanti, this fancy Italian restaurant that had recently opened downtown. 15 people were invited, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole extended family circus. The reservation is at 7 sharp, Mom had reminded me 3 separate times that week. Don't you dare be late, Andrea. This is important. I had it written in my calendar, set reminders on my phone, even left work early to make sure I'd have plenty of time to get ready. But the universe had other plans. At 6 o'clock, just as I was shutting down my computer, my boss materialized at my desk with that look, the one that meant my evening was about to implode. Andrea, I hate to do this, but we've got a client emergency. The Peterson account is having system failures, and they're threatening to pull their contract if we don't fix it tonight. My stomach nodded instantly. I have my parents' anniversary dinner in an hour. I know. Just 5 minutes. 10 at most. I promise we'll get you out of here. Those 5 minutes stretched into 30. Every time I tried to leave, another crisis emerged, another urgent email demanded my immediate attention. I watched the clock creep past 6:30, then 6:45, my hands literally shaking as I typed. When I finally broke free at 6:45, I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys as anxiety clawed at my throat. The drive to Belanti felt like a nightmare in slow motion. Every red light lasted an eternity. Every slow driver seemed to deliberately position themselves in front of me. I kept checking the time on my dashboard, watching 7 o'clock come and go while I sat trapped in traffic that felt personally vindictive. By the time I pulled into Belanti's parking lot at 7:30, I was already rehearsing my apology. I knew Mom would be upset, but I figured everyone would understand. Work emergencies happen. Family forgives. The hostess directed me to the back of the restaurant, and I hurried through the dining room, my heels clicking against the tile floor as I navigated between tables of other families enjoying their celebrations. But the scene that greeted me wasn't what I'd expected. Not at all. Instead of people waiting for me to arrive so dinner could begin, I found 15 family members lounging around a table covered with empty plates, wine glasses drained to the dregs, and crumpled napkins scattered like confetti. It looked like the aftermath of a feast, not the beginning of one. "Hey everyone, sorry I'm late," I said, pulling out the one empty chair they'd left for me. "Work was crazy, but I'm here now." That's when I noticed the faces turning toward me, and the expressions weren't what I'd expected. My Aunt Gwendolyn was grinning like she knew some inside joke I wasn't privy to. My cousin Tyler was trying to hide a smirk behind his wine glass. Even my dad, usually the peacemaker, had this weird almost smile playing at the corners of his mouth. My mom looked at me with this sickeningly sweet expression and delivered the first blow with the casual air of someone commenting on the weather. "Oh honey, we moved dinner up by 2 hours." Everyone was so hungry. I stared at her, the words not quite computing. "What?" "But the reservation was at 7. I confirmed it with you this morning." "Well," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd heard 1,000 times before, "we didn't think you'd actually show up. You're always so busy with work and everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. My jaw literally dropped as I processed what she just said. They'd moved my parents' anniversary dinner, a dinner I'd been looking forward to for weeks, without telling me, because they assumed I wouldn't show up. "Are you serious right now?" I managed to choke out. "I told you 3 times this week I'd be here. I even left work early." That's when my sister Amber chimed in, pointing at the remnants of the meal with the enthusiasm of someone offering table scraps to a stray dog. "Look, there's still tons of food left. You can eat the leftovers." I followed her gesture to see what remained of their celebration, half-eaten breadsticks that had gone cold, some congealed pasta and serving bowls that looked like they'd been picked over by vultures, and the sad remains of a salad that had clearly seen better days. This was what they were offering me, the scraps of a dinner they deliberately excluded me from. My stomach turned, and not just from hunger. "This is insane," I said, my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. "Why didn't anyone call me about the time change?" My dad cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable for the first time since I'd arrived. "Andy, we just figured with your schedule." But Mom cut him off by reaching into her purse and pulling out a folded piece of paper. The movement was theatrical, practiced, like she'd been waiting for this moment all evening. "Since you're here now," she said, extending the paper toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "this is perfect timing. You can take care of this." I took the paper and unfolded it, my eyes scanning the contents before my brain could fully process what I was seeing. It was the dinner bill. $1,500. I read the number twice, then 3 times, certain I had to be misunderstanding something. $1,500 for a dinner I hadn't eaten, at a celebration they deliberately excluded me from. "Mom," I said slowly, "this has to be a joke." Her smile widened, and there was something almost predatory about it. "Oh, I never joke about money, sweetie. You have that great job and no kids or husband to spend money on. This is easy for you." That's when the laughter started. Not polite chuckles or uncomfortable giggles, but actual, hearty laughter. My Uncle Gerald was practically choking on his wine. My Aunt Gwendolyn was wiping tears from her eyes. Even the cousins I'd grown up with, the ones I'd played with at family gatherings for decades, were joining in the chorus of amusement at my expense. "This is exactly the right call," my Aunt Gwendolyn managed between giggles. "Older kids need to help their parents. It's what family does." I felt like I was trapped in some kind of surreal nightmare. "Are you all serious right now?" My dad leaned back in his chair, his earlier discomfort replaced by something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Come on, Andy. You always help us out. It's like our family tradition now, you pay the big bills, we have a good time. Don't break tradition." More laughter erupted around the table. My Uncle Gerald raised his wine glass in a mock toast. "To our family ATM." And then my sister, my own sister, the person I'd been covering rent for since she graduated college, shouted out with drunken enthusiasm, "Yeah, our ATM that doesn't need a PIN code. The jokes kept coming. They talked about how I was their personal bank, how lucky they were to have someone to pay for everything, how I should be grateful they even invited me to events I was expected to fund. Each comment hit like a slap, and I sat there absorbing it all, watching these people I'd loved and supported for years reveal exactly what they thought of me. But something strange happened as I listened to their laughter. Instead of getting angrier, I started feeling almost relieved. Like finally, after all these years, I was hearing the truth. Sure, they were drunk and their filters were off, but drunk people tell the truth, don't they? This was what they really thought about me, what they'd probably been saying behind my back for years. I looked down at the bill in my hands. $1,500 for a dinner I didn't eat, at a celebration they'd moved without telling me, surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than a source of funding for their good times. That's when I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I tore the bill in half, then in half again, and again, and again, until it was nothing but confetti in my palms. "Happy anniversary to everyone," I said, standing up and letting the pieces flutter onto the table like snow. The laughter stopped immediately, as if someone had flipped a switch. I grabbed my purse and started walking toward the exit, my heels clicking against the floor with a rhythm that sounded almost like applause. Behind me, I could hear Mom calling my name, her voice sharp with panic, but I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, past the other diners who were now staring at our table, past the hostess who looked mortified, past the life I'd been living where my worth was measured in dollars and my love was taken for granted. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, though there was plenty of that, but from something else. Something that felt almost like freedom. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. I kept replaying the evening in my mind, but instead of focusing on the hurt and embarrassment, I found myself thinking about all the other times I'd been expected to pay for everyone else's good time. The pattern was so clear now that I couldn't believe I'd missed it for so long. When I got home, my phone was already going crazy. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, and they kept coming. "Amber, you need to come back right now and pay that bill." "Mom, Andrea, this is embarrassing. Get back here." "Dad, your mother is crying. Fix this." More texts flooded in throughout the night, all variations on the same theme. I was wrong, I was selfish, I was destroying the family over money. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were accusing me of making everything about money while simultaneously demanding I come back and pay their bill. I turned my phone to silent and went to bed, but sleep was impossible. My mind was racing, connecting dots I'd been blind to for years. I'd been paying my parents' mortgage for 2 years, their mortgage, their utilities, their car payments. I'd been covering Amber's rent for 6 months, even though she had a job and was making money. Money that apparently went to clothes and nights out while I covered her basic living expenses. I'd been supporting all of them while they spent their own money on whatever they wanted, and tonight, they'd made it crystal clear exactly what they thought of me for it. I wasn't their daughter or sister, I was their ATM. Their personal bank account that didn't require a PIN code. The next morning felt like waking up in a different world. My phone was still buzzing with notifications, 47 missed calls, 62 text messages. The messages were all variations on the same theme: come back and pay. "You embarrassed us. This is your responsibility." I deleted them all without reading most of them. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. A payment request from Mom for $1,500. The note said, "Anniversary dinner gift." I actually laughed out loud. A gift. They wanted me to pay for a dinner I didn't eat and call it a gift to them. The audacity was almost impressive. I opened the Venmo app and hit the decline button. It felt amazing. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But something made me answer. Maybe I was curious to see what new manipulation tactics she'd try. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed before I could even say hello. "Have you completely lost your mind? You embarrassed your father and me last night. We couldn't even look our family in the eye after you pulled that stunt." I poured my coffee and sat down at my kitchen table, surprised by how calm I felt. What stunt? Not paying for a dinner I wasn't invited to eat? You were invited. We just moved the time up because people were hungry. And we all decided at the family meeting that you would handle the bill. What family meeting? I asked. When was I invited to that? It doesn't matter, she snapped. Everyone knows you can afford it. You make more money than any of us. This is what family does, Andrea. I took a sip of my coffee, marveling at how different this conversation felt compared to all the others we'd had over the years. For the first time, I wasn't scrambling to apologize or make excuses or figure out how to fix whatever crisis they'd created. No, Mom. This is what you've been making me do. But I'm done being your ATM. I'm done paying for everything while you all spend your own money on whatever you want. I'm not your financial sponsor anymore. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Mom's voice got softer, taking on that manipulative tone I'd heard 1,000 times before, the one she used when she wanted to make me feel like a child having a tantrum. Honey, you don't mean that. Look, I know you got your feelings hurt last night. Everyone was drinking and joking around. You know how family gatherings get. We didn't mean anything by it. You're being way too sensitive about this. Too sensitive. There it was. The classic response of someone who's been caught treating you badly. Turn it around and make it your fault for having feelings about it. Too sensitive? I repeated. You moved my parents' anniversary dinner without telling me, expected me to pay for everyone's meal, and then made jokes about using me for money. And I'm being too sensitive? Andrea, stop being so dramatic. Just transfer the money and we can forget this whole thing happened. I hung up on her. Within 5 minutes, she was calling back. I declined the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad's number, then Amber's. But they didn't give up easily. Unknown numbers started calling me every 10 minutes. As soon as I heard one of their voices, I'd hang up and block that number too. I must have blocked 8 different numbers that morning. Then my Aunt Gwendolyn called from her phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Andrea, it's Aunt Gwendolyn. Look, I was there last night. Maybe things got a little out of hand, but that's no reason to cut off your whole family. Aunt Gwendolyn, I said, let me ask you something. How much money have you given my parents in the last year? How much of your money have you spent on their bills, their mortgage, their car payments? Silence. That's what I thought. But somehow it's normal for me to do it, right? Because I make good money and don't have kids. Andrea, you're successful. It's natural that you'd want to help your family. Help is different from being used, I said. Tell my parents and Amber to stop trying to contact me. I'm done with all of this. I hung up and blocked her number too. After that, the calls stopped. The house got quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. No one demanding money, no one asking me to cover bills, no one making me feel guilty for having a decent job. I spent the weekend cleaning my apartment, something I hadn't had time for in months because I was always dealing with some family financial crisis. I went grocery shopping without worrying about having enough money left over for someone else's rent. I even bought myself a nice bottle of wine, something I hadn't done in years because every spare dollar had been going to my family's expenses. By Sunday night, I realized something remarkable. I felt lighter than I had in years. Like I'd been carrying this enormous weight around and had finally put it down. I thought about all the money I'd given them over the years. The house payments when Dad was between jobs for 6 months. The car repair bills. Amber's college expenses even though she had student loans. Her apartment deposit and first month's rent. The vacation they'd taken to Florida last year, a vacation I'd funded but wasn't invited on. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Money I could have saved or used for my own life. Money I'd given because I thought that's what families do for each other. But when was the last time they'd helped me with anything? When I was sick with the flu last year, did anyone bring me soup or medicine? When I was working 70-hour weeks on that big project, did anyone ask if I needed anything? The answer was no. Because in their minds, I existed to give, not to receive. I was successful, so I didn't need help. I didn't have kids, so I didn't deserve sympathy. I made good money, so I owed them. 3 months passed in blessed silence. 3 months of keeping my money for myself. 3 months of not being anyone's personal bank. My savings account grew bigger than it had ever been. I was actually putting money away for the first time since college. I bought new furniture for my apartment. I took a weekend trip to the mountains just because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I was living my own life instead of funding everyone else's. Those 3 months of peace ended with a phone call that changed everything. I was getting ready for work on a Tuesday morning when my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Miss Andrea Parker? This is Jennifer from Chase Bank's Collections Department. I'm calling about your overdue credit card account ending in 4792. You're currently 2 months behind on payments. I stopped brushing my teeth. I'm sorry, what? I don't have a Chase credit card. According to our records, you applied for a Chase Freedom Card 2 months ago. The account shows a balance of $20,847, and you've missed your last 2 minimum payments. My heart started racing. That's impossible. I never applied for any credit card with Chase. This has to be a mistake. Let me verify some information with you, the representative said. The application shows an email address that was used for the account setup. She read off an email address, and my stomach dropped. I recognized it immediately. It was Amber's email address. That's not my email, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That email belongs to my sister. I see. Well, the application shows that email address along with your social security number and home address. I'm going to email you the application documents right now so you can review them. I hung up and immediately checked my email. The documents came through 5 minutes later, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There was my name, my social security number, my address, but Amber's email address listed as the contact. At the bottom of the application was a signature that looked like mine, but something was off about it. And the phone number listed wasn't mine either. I scrolled through the account statements with growing horror. The card had been used at restaurants, clothing stores, electronics shops. Someone had bought an $800 iPhone, spent $500 at some fancy steakhouse, made multiple purchases at designer clothing stores. $20,000 in 2 months. The application date made my blood run cold. The card had been opened exactly 1 month after that anniversary dinner at Belanti. 1 month after I'd refused to pay their bill and cut them off financially. My hands were shaking as the realization hit me. When they lost access to my money, they decided to take it anyway by opening a credit card in my name using my personal information. My own sister had stolen my identity and opened a credit card in my name. I called Chase back immediately. This is Andrea Parker. I just reviewed those documents you sent me. This is definitely fraud. Someone used my identity to open this account. I understand. We'll need you to file a fraud report and provide documentation. In the meantime, the account remains in your name and the balance is still your responsibility until we complete our investigation. How long does that take? Usually 30 to 60 days. I recommend you also file a police report for identity theft. After I got off the phone with Chase, I sat in my apartment staring at those statements. $20,000. Money spent on clothes and dinners and electronics while I was working my ass off and trying to build a life for myself. And they'd done this as revenge for me cutting off their money supply. I grabbed my car keys. It was time to have a conversation with my parents. I drove to their house for the first time in 3 months, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Mom answered the door, and her face went through about 5 different expressions when she saw me. Andrea? What are you doing here? We need to talk. Now. I pushed past her into the living room where Dad was watching TV. He looked up, surprised. Look who decided to grace us with her presence, he said sarcastically. I pulled out the bank documents and threw them on the coffee table. Amber opened a credit card in my name. She forged my signature and stole my identity. $20,000. Mom picked up the papers and looked at them. Her face didn't show any surprise, and that's when I knew. You knew about this, I said, watching her expression. You knew and you let it happen. Andrea, calm down. We can explain. Explain? She committed fraud. Dad muted the TV and turned to face me. We needed the money. It was the easiest way to get it without bothering anyone. Without bothering anyone? You stole from me. Mom sat down and folded her hands like she was about to have a reasonable conversation. Honey, you have a good salary. You can handle this. We used the card to pay some house bills, went out to eat a few times, and Amber bought herself some things she needed. Things she needed? I stared at them both. There's $800 here for an iPhone. Her old phone was broken, Mom said dismissively. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you insane? This is identity theft. This is fraud. I could have you all arrested. Oh please, Mom said, waving her hand. Don't be so dramatic. It's just money. You'll pay it off in a few months and everything will be fine. I'll pay it off? I didn't spend this money. Dad leaned forward. Look, we taught you a lesson about refusing to help your family. Now you have to pay whether you like it or not. Maybe next time you'll think twice before walking out on us. That's when it hit me. They'd committed fraud as punishment for me not paying a restaurant bill. They'd stolen my identity because I'd finally stood up for myself. This conversation is over, I said, grabbing the documents off the table. And so is our relationship. Don't be ridiculous, Mom called as I headed for the door. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I shouted back. I drove straight to my friend William's law office. We'd known each other since high school, and I trusted him more than anyone. Jesus, Andy, he said after reading through everything. This is serious fraud. Identity theft, forged documents, unauthorized use of credit. You could definitely press criminal charges. What are my options? Well, you could go to the police right now and file a report. They'd probably arrest all three of them. Or you could file a civil lawsuit for damages. He leaned back in his chair. Or we could send them a letter first. See if they're willing to pay restitution before we involve law enforcement. What would you recommend? Let me draft a formal demand letter. We'll give them 60 days to pay back the full amount. If they don't, then you can decide if you want to pursue criminal charges or sue them in civil court. Do it. William worked on the letter for 2 days. It was 3 pages of legal language that basically said, pay back the $20,000 or face criminal prosecution and a civil lawsuit. He sent it certified mail to my parents' address. The phone calls started immediately after my parents received William's letter. First Mom called, screaming about how I was being vindictive and greedy. Then Dad called, saying I was destroying the family over money. Then Amber called, crying about how she'd only taken a small amount and I was making a huge deal out of nothing. I let them all go to voicemail. When I finally listened to the messages, they were all variations on the same theme. I was wrong, I was cruel, I was tearing apart the family over a little bit of money. A little bit of money. $20,000 was a little bit of money to them. For the next 2 weeks, they kept trying different phone numbers to reach me. Different relatives called, all trying to convince me to drop the legal action. All of them using the same arguments. I was successful, so I should just let it go. Family doesn't involve lawyers. I was being too harsh. None of them offered to help pay back the money they thought was so insignificant. Then, on day 58 of the 60-day deadline, I got a notification on my phone. A Venmo transfer for $20,000 from my father. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They'd actually done it. They'd paid me back. I immediately called Chase Bank and paid off the entire credit card balance. Then I had them close the account permanently. I never found out where my parents got the money. My best guess is they took out a loan or borrowed from someone else. I didn't really care. It wasn't my problem anymore. After that, there was complete silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no surprise visits. For the first time in my adult life, my family left me alone. Months passed. I saved more money than I ever had before. I took a vacation to Europe by myself. I bought a new car. I started investing in retirement accounts. For the first time, my money was actually mine. Right before Thanksgiving, I got an email from Amber. The subject line said, "Family dinner invitation." "Hey Andy," it said. "We're having Thanksgiving at Mom and Dad's house this year. It's going to be just like when we were kids. Hope you can make it. Love, Amber." I read it twice and started laughing. They wanted things to go back to how they were, back when I was their reliable source of funding. But those days were over. I deleted the email without responding. A week before Christmas, a package showed up at my door. Inside was a pair of sneakers I'd been wanting for months, along with an invitation to Christmas dinner. I looked at the sneakers. They were exactly the right size and color. Someone had been paying attention to what I wanted. For a moment, I felt something that might have been hope. Maybe they actually cared about me as more than just a source of money. I kept the sneakers but didn't go to Christmas dinner. Instead, I bought small gifts for all of them and had them delivered. Nothing expensive, just token presents to acknowledge the holiday. But I stayed home and had Christmas by myself. It was peaceful. Now, almost a year later, I'm living a completely different life. No one calls asking for money. No one guilts me into paying bills that aren't mine. No one treats me like a walking ATM. My savings account has more money in it than ever before. I'm planning another vacation, maybe to Japan this time. I'm thinking about buying a house. I've heard through mutual friends that Amber has gotten her act together. She took on a second job and started helping Mom and Dad with their bills. Apparently, when they couldn't rely on me anymore, they figured out how to manage their own finances. Who would have thought? I'm not ready to reconcile with them yet. Maybe I never will be. The trust is broken in a way that might be impossible to repair. They didn't just ask me for money, they stole it. They didn't just hurt my feelings, they committed crimes against me. But I don't hate them either. I just don't want them in my life right now. Maybe someday that will change. Maybe someday they'll understand what they did wrong and actually apologize for it. Or maybe they won't. And that's okay too. Because I've learned something important, family isn't supposed to be transactional. Love isn't supposed to come with a price tag. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who see you as nothing more than a bank account with legs. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your self-worth. Sometimes our greatest strength appears the moment we stop enabling those who take us for granted.